All right, welcome to today's explainer. Look, if you're a focused learner trying to finally unlock your English speaking potential, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're unpacking a really powerful, super direct approach from the Fearless Guide to English Fluency. We spend so much time just agonizing over complex grammar rules, but honestly, we almost completely ignore the psychological side of learning. So let's dive into how shifting your mindset is literally the secret weapon to speaking English with total confidence. But before we get into the actual methodology, I want you to ask yourself this one simple but honestly profound question. What actually holds us back from fluency? Think about it. You might know thousands of English words. You can probably read articles or understand your favorite English movies perfectly fine. But the second you have to actually open your mouth to simply introduce yourself or just chat with a friend, what happens? Everything freezes, doesn't it? That hesitation is just such a universal hurdle. And recognizing that this anxiety is a shared experience, that we all go through it, that's really the very first step to dismantling the whole thing. So, the real motivational core for our explainer today comes from this brilliant little title, How to Speak English Without Fear. And, notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say how to speak English with perfect grammar, right? And it definitely doesn't say how to memorize the entire dictionary. No way. The entire focus is positioned right there in those last two words, without fear. The ultimate key to unlocking spoken English isn't found buried in another textbook. It's honestly found in just conquering your own internal anxiety. Let's actually deconstruct what it means to be fearless in this context. It definitely does not mean you have some flawless, magical command of the language. Actually, scratch that. It's more like communicating without that terrible dread of making mistakes. Here's the absolute secret we all have to internalize. Making mistakes is completely 100% normal. It's just an unavoidable part of the learning process. Being fearless just means giving yourself permission to sound messy sometimes. Use simple vocabulary, stick to basic sentences, and just know that every single error is really just a stepping stone toward mastery. Think about the stark contrast here between speaking with fear versus speaking without it. When you speak with fear, it's like your brain is constantly buffering. You know the feeling? You're frantically translating every single word from your native language in your head before you even say a thing. You hesitate. But contrast that with speaking without fear, that uninhibited communication. It's just the feeling of letting the words flow out. Even if you completely mess up the verb tense or your pronunciation isn't picture perfect, the communication keeps going. You're actually present in the conversation, not trapped inside your own head. So, what does fluency actually mean when we strip away all that fear? Well, it's simply the ability to express yourself smoothly, prioritizing connection over absolute perfection. I really, really want you to focus on that phrase for a second. Connection over perfection. If you successfully order food at a restaurant or you manage to grab a coffee, but you use the totally wrong preposition, guess what? You were fluent in that interaction. You communicated effectively, and that's what matters. Confidence is the actual engine that drives expression. Now, this philosophy builds a very clear, easy-to-follow pathway. Step 1. Acknowledge the barrier of fear. You just have to admit when you get nervous. It's fine. Step 2. Aim for smooth fluency over perfection. Recalibrate your goals away from sounding like a walking grammar textbook. And step 3. Adopt a confident, cool mindset. And how do we actually do that? Well, through simple, everyday daily practice. Try just speaking out loud in front of a mirror. Practice thinking in English during your daily commute. Start with super small conversations. This is exactly how you start to transform your entire relationship with a language. The absolute, completely non-negotiable key to unlocking your spoken English is doing it without fear. Just think about the physical reaction of anxiety for a second. Your throat gets tight, your mind goes totally blank. It is literally biologically impossible to recall vocabulary smoothly when you're in a panic. But by focusing entirely on removing that fear, you essentially open the floodgates. All the English you've already studied, the simple vocabulary you already know, and the phrases you've picked up from just listening to English content daily, it can all finally rise to the surface. So it all elegantly breaks down into these three core elements. The promise of fluency, that's our destination. The removal of fear, that's the primary obstacle we've got to eliminate. And the embrace of confidence, that's the vehicle that actually carries us forward. You don't need to stress over a million different complex grammar rules today. You really just need to focus on navigating these three elements in your everyday practice. And I love this. The source material includes a very intentional symbol, the sunglasses emoji. Why? Because it brilliantly anchors the exact vibe we have to adopt. It represents being cool, calm, and collected.
When you put on those metaphorical sunglasses, you're basically shielding yourself from the glare of judgment. You're signaling to your own brain, hey, this isn't a pop quiz. This is literally just a conversation. And that cool, confident energy, that's exactly what makes someone incredibly engaging to talk to, regardless of what their actual language level is.
So, we've broken down the philosophy. We understand now that mistakes are just normal, everyday data points for learning, and that confidence matters so much more than perfect grammar. So, I'm going to leave you with a somewhat provocative question. Will you choose to speak without fear today? Because letting go of that anxiety is a choice you make every single time you open your mouth. You've got the tools. Now, it's time to put on those metaphorical sunglasses, step out into the real world, embrace the inevitable mistakes, and honestly, just start talking. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I seriously cannot wait for you to experience the freedom of fearless fluency.